Mark was on his way to a psychologist for another appointment. He was tired of people saying he was deluded, not believing him. He saw weird things more and more lately, but what frustrated him so much was no one believing him. He knew what he saw was real. He reached the building and went inside and took the elevator to the 3rd floor where his psychologist had his office. While he was in the elevator, he was thinking of what to tell his psychologist this week. In the office, Mark's psychologist spoke. "Oh Mark, don't worry. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We just need to find out a few things about what happened in your past that might be causing these breaks in reality. I am going to show you a few drawings, and I would kindly appreciate if you told me what you saw in them, please." Mark's psychologist held up the first photo, and Mark looked at it for a few seconds, then said, "I see a dragon." Then he held up another. "And what do you see in this one, please, Mark?" Mark yet again took another few seconds to look at it, and then said, "Some kind of alien." Mark was getting impatient with this exercise. He saw many times in the movies, and he often wondered what it was made of. It was like it was just trying to find out, was the person crazy? And he knew he wasn't crazy. He knew he saw what he saw. The only thing is, why doesn't anyone believe him? He felt like if someone just believed him, maybe they would go away. His psychologist held up another photo. Mark took longer this time, and then said, "It's obviously a gun." His psychologist smiled and said, "Okay Mark, this is going to take a while to sort out, but I can guarantee you that what you see is not real, and that's for sure." 30 minutes later, the session had ended, and Mark had left the building. His psychologist felt strange. He felt kind of faint. Then he froze in fear when he saw a dragon fly into the room. Then what looked like an alien came into the room. He screamed out in horror, but before his receptionist could come into the room to see what was wrong, a gun floated in the air over to his head, and then the gun went off. When the receptionist came into the room, she screamed and called the police, telling them he had shot himself in the head. Mark wondered why his psychologist killed himself, but he was relieved. His visions had stopped. Brenda and Tony were driving along the countryside on a December night. They were on a road trip for 2 weeks as a part of unwinding from a lot of hard work doing up their new house. The plan was to stay in several motels along the way and enjoy the road trip and eating out in diners and enjoying the scenery in between. It was just about getting dark when Brenda was surprised to see a hitchhiker on the road. She said to Tony, "Do you see that?" Tony said, "Yeah, I wonder who is it, way out here." The couple decided to stop, and the hitchhiker said, "Hi there, my name is Paul. I would really love if you could give me a drive just a few miles up the road to the next motel, please. I took the wrong bus and I'm walking miles." Tony said, "Sure, hop in the back." The man's name was Peter. When he was in the back, he began to speak. I was sure happy to see you guys come along. I must have been walking for miles. I was about to drop unconscious with tiredness from all the walking, and believe me, I'm not fit enough to walk that long. But ye guys, where are ye from? Let me guess. The big city, or maybe you're from the suburbs. Maybe you're the type of people that look down on folk like me. Brenda and Tony found that comment to be strange. Tony said, "Excuse me? Why would we look down on you?" Peter suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it to Brenda's head and said, "I'll tell you why you look down on me, because I've a gun held to your girlfriend, or is it your wife's head, and you're probably saying to yourself, I'm crazy." Tony said in a voice filled with fear and shock, "What the hell, man? Put away that gun." Peter said, "I do the talking around here, now keep driving." Brenda began to feel around her pocket for her phone and pretended to sneeze, to look down and press 911. When she did, she kept the phone on, hoping it would be traced. Tony said, "Look man, I don't know what's going on, okay? But I know that we did nothing to you, so please just put the gun away." Suddenly Peter shouted, "Stop the damn car." Brenda shouted, "Please, no, please stop, just leave us alone." When the car stopped, Peter shot Tony in the back of his head, and he died instantly. The hitchhiker shouted to Brenda, "You're lucky I'm not going to kill you, bitch," and he ran out of the car. Brenda picked the phone up and said to the 911 operator, "Please help me, please, my husband has just been killed by some guy we picked up." 10 minutes later, the police arrived and took a statement from Brenda. Brenda was sitting inside her home that herself and Tony had recently refurbished. There was a noise at the door, and a figure walked into the room. She could see that it was Peter the hitchhiker. He pulled out a gun and pointed at her. Then he smiled and said, "Bang, bang." She smiled back at him and said, "I have your money, and thanks for taking this job. He actually was cheating on me all the while we were doing up our new home." Peter said, "I actually must give you credit for this idea and coming up with the 911 call, etc. But as much as I'd love to stay around for tea, I need to get going, because if your police or neighbours see me, then who knows, tongues might start wagging and they might ask questions." Brenda asked, "What do you mean? How will they trace you to all this? They never even saw your face." Peter said, "I know, but I still have to tie up loose ends." Brenda said, "What do you mean?" Peter said, "Don't worry, it will be over soon." He lifted the gun and shot Brenda in her head. Then he walked into her bedroom and opened up her safe with her own finger he cut off just a minute ago. He was going to just go ahead and murder her husband for $100,000, but she had too much a big mouth and told him about a safe full of diamonds that only her fingerprint would open. He smiled when he looked at all the diamonds. Then suddenly he heard a ticking sound. He wondered what it was. He looked around the room to see. Suddenly all the doors and windows locked. He assumed it was some sort of alarm from the safe being opened at a time that wasn't scheduled. He heard the ticking get louder as he looked under the bed and saw that it was a bomb. From the timer he saw that it would detonate in 10 minutes. For the next 10 minutes he looked around for a way out of the house, but when the 10th minute came, he exploded with the house. Susan was looking through old papers and documents in her family home that was standing for over 300 years. She didn't remember her parents that much because they were killed in a freak accident in their garden. She didn't know the details. She had photos of them, and that is all she remembered. She was reading through different documents when she came to a certain one that grabbed her attention instantly. It read, "I put the treasure in the garden for safekeeping." It was signed by her mom. She noticed the date in the diary entry was exactly the same day her mom had her accident. She wondered, was she murdered for the treasure? This kept bothering Susan more and more. When she was out walking, she kept thinking, were her parents murdered for whatever was buried in her garden? She thought all through the years that her parents were in some sort of freak accident, and now she is worried that it was plain, old-fashioned murder. A week later, she had enough of wondering and just had to go out to the garden to dig up the treasure. There was a page that had the exact position of the garden where it would be. She had a pitchfork and shovel and dug until eventually she hit a hard piece of what she guessed was wood. Sure enough, it was a chest, and when she opened it, she smiled, seeing that it was full of what looked like priceless gold and jewels. She came across photos that made her nearly get sick, as there were photos of her parents and what she guessed were her grandparents, with some sort of spike in their eye. She suddenly heard a noise, and her leg slipped, and she fell on the fork, which gouged right into her eye. She screamed, realizing that the spikes in the fork were what were in her parents' and grandparents' eyes. She fell into the hole and screamed when she saw what looked like a white ghost hovering over her, and within seconds she realized there were bones near her, and seconds later she was buried alive. The spirit was of Mason Jeffers, the estranged son who was cut out of his inheritance over 250 years ago. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content.